Hi, I'm Anoushka Shankar. I play sitar, and I've been here at Gent Jazz performing last night and tonight, which is a real treat. I grew up learning in a very traditional classical Indian style of playing, specifically my father's style of playing. He very much innovated himself, so even his style, Ravi Shankar's style of playing, was very much his own, but he comes from a line of, sitar playing of the Senia Binkar Gharana or the Maiher Gharana, which is really known for its specific style of instrumental playing that very much emulates the voice, and it traces its roots to Tansen, who is a 15th century musician who is kind of one of the fathers of our classical music style. In reality, that root is a big part of what I do and my musical brain and what shapes me, but it's not really what I'm performing when people come and see my shows. I've very much in the last 20 years been kind of finding a language and a vocabulary for myself and my instrument that makes a bit more sense of maybe the world that I've grown up in and lived in, and my tricultural upbringing across 3 continents. So that classical root is a big part of me, but it's not me also. I think of the instrument as very much differently than I think of the musical style it came from. And I think when people think of the sitar, they actually don't realize they're mixing the two. They're thinking of Indian classical music and they're thinking of the sitar and not realizing they're 2 different things. Whereas if you think of a piano or you think of a guitar or instruments that maybe have a broader presence in Western culture, you don't think of it synonymously with classical music or synonymously with a genre of rock or country. You know that the guitar can exist across all these spaces. And I very strongly feel the sitar is the same. It's broad and it has huge scope and huge possibility. And I try and show people in a show what it can be. I suppose the short answer about my current trilogy of mini albums that I've just released is that it's about healing. I started making chapter 1, Forever for Now, when I was in a time of great difficulty with a loved one, and all of that pain needed a space in the music. By the time I made chapter 2, How Dark It Is Before Dawn, I was thinking about how do we heal from that pain? How do we take ourselves away and create a space of safety and womb-like healing? And I was thinking of that by then in a global sense as well. What does the world need to heal? Because it's very, very dark in a lot of ways, and yet there are these pockets of light that are there if we lean towards them and if we grow them. So then finally chapter 3 became We Return to Light. What happens when we do finally have that space of light and healing because we've created it for ourselves and for each other. And that 3-part journey is what we're exploring on stage. I'm mindful not to speak in a very gendered way because I think things are very fluid, but I think there's something about feminine energy, whoever it's coming from, and approaching issues of the world or of the self in a non-patriarchal way, which I think is really, really important. How a female energy comes to resolving conflict or to acknowledging the need for space or gentleness or vulnerability. I think those are the spaces where change and healing can really happen, as opposed to that slightly more binary patriarchal way of thinking that we have to fight through something or that there's only one or another. And all of that stuff doesn't leave room for a real messy human authentic experience. And I think when you see the kind of landscape that a lot of the female artists are creating or people who lean into that space, it's really where the magic is today. It's really interesting to think about where am I coming from today as an artist, because I can't separate that from the fact that I'm coming to my artistry from a place of being a woman in my early 40s, someone who's raised 2 children, who's lived through a lot of stuff. All of that feeds into my playing, and I think if I really look back into my early days touring as a teenager or making music in my 20s, there was more fear, there was more people pleasing, there was more thinking about how do I do what's right or what's expected, maybe some good little Indian girl training in my back brain, that type A personality of being raised as a girl and needing to seek approval. So it's not that I don't care anymore, but I do feel like actually it takes time. It can take decades sometimes to truly come into yourself, to truly come into that space of oh, I am comfortable and confident in my voice, in my artistry. I think really I've come to that now. And it's a really exciting way to make music.